Welcome to Tech presented by KYZEN, where we will explore common cleaning questions and answers. Let's get started. I would like to introduce KYZEN's own Joe McChesney.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk about future-proofing the solvent cleaning processes. A lot of changes in the solvent world over the last several months and years. So, how do you identify the key factors that you're going to basically be looking at as you look at your existing solvent applications? And number one is to identify the key factors. There are many changes in today's world, as I just recently discussed. A world where supply chain shortages and environmental issues can drastically affect your solvent cleaning operations. And how does that happen? Well, if you're using solvent by choice or necessity, you're probably already aware that the future is still very viable using modern solvent technology. The verification of the removal of manufacturing or other soils from the final product is paramount, no matter which type of process you use. Process used does not contribute to EH&S issues. And that's the big factor in today's world. So you got to future proof your solvent process if you're going to stay with solvent. And today we're going to identify how to help do that easily. Step two is establish the requirements. A lot of changes in the world with 3M exiting the NOVEC HFE solvents and also the HFCs under the AIM Act. You'll see in a little bit later on a couple of slides. Also, TCE, NPB, perchloroethylene, methylene chloride are all under review by the EPA for EH&S concerns. But that's not all of it. If you look at the operator exposure limits, the flammability, the hazardous air pollutant classifications, carcinogenic possibilities, and being phased out by the EPA, and several other compliance limitations, there's a lot of things to consider, especially if your supply has been basically discontinued within a short period of time. You have to establish replacement viable alternatives. So, what are the hot topics today? The things to consider. First and foremost is the HFEs exit by 3M discontinuation. You'll see that on the next slide. The HFCs under government phase out by the AIM Act. You'll see that on the following slide. The TSCA list under the EPA, Toxic Substance Control Act, is identifying and regulating several chemicals, and most of them are chlorinated and brominated. And then last, PFAS is a hot topic because the EPA is basically establishing PFAS regulations, and as well as many states such as Minnesota, Maine, Washington, California, etc. So the big news in 2022, was that 3M announced to the world that they're exiting and discontinue use of the HFEs, which basically were contributed to PFAS in the production portfolio. The common trade names were NOVEC and Fluorinert, and they were the largest HFE manufacturer in the world. So they're basically leaving the market in 2025. So if you're using 3M chemistry, you have to replace it. The HFC solvent components are to be phased out. Under the AIM Act, 40% of the HFCs will be phased out in 2024. The remaining subject basically will be a phase out over time. Most of these solvents are designated for foam blowing agents, refrigerants, and solvent degreasing. With the solvent degreasers being phased out part, going to be you need to replace those solvents. Under the EPA TSCA regulations, NPB, perchloroethylene, methylene chloride are all being basically reviewed and regulated. And if you look at the final regulations for the ECEL, existing chemical exposure limits, they're so low that no open top degreaser will meet these qualifications and very few vacuum degreasers. So at this point, these solvents will probably be regulated out of existence within a short period of time. So what's the next step? Well, obviously, you're going to make the right choice. Solvent can still be a wise choice. You need to ensure the environmental performance, cleanliness levels, and compatibility. Solvents that are not classified as a PFAS, you definitely don't want to go that route. Sustainable supply and environmental compliance. You're already seeing where some of the solvents are being phased out by the existing manufacturers. Superior products and technical support by supplier is important as you make your changes. And we have future-proof solvents that do not contain HFEs or HFCs. So how do you future-proof your solvent options? What is the best solvent for my cleaning process? So the options you have, the global solvents of choice are HFO blends, hydrofluoroolefin blends, as well as trans 1,2-DCE blends for vapor degreasing. Modified alcohol and hydrocarbons are excellent choices for vacuum degreasing. So for the solvent user that must use solvent, either by choice or necessity again, these are your solvent choices. So what are your options when you get ready to change your existing solvent? You can go to an alternative solvent in your existing degreaser, replace that solvent with a new generation solvent, or you can look at a vacuum degreasing system, which is the fastest growing global market today. Future proof option number one, replace the existing solvent with another type in your existing degreaser. If your degreaser is a modern generation with excellent cooling capacity, sealed covers, and automatic work handling, typically that's an easy change to do. Older generation degreasers, with today's cost of the new solvent, you may need to consider a more efficient unit. And what do modern degreasers offer? They offer solvent conservation, energy efficiency, automated process control, and improved EH&S concerns for the atmosphere. KYZEN's new future-proof solvents, they're designed as drop-in for the 3M NOVEC 7100, 72DA, 73DE, 71 IPA, etc. And these solvents vary in applications from our SLV 801, which is a neat solvent that basically designed for replacing 7100 in regards to aerospace and medical and military applications. SLV 901 is a blend of an HFO as also 1,2 trans, and it's designed for all types of general degreasing applications. And M6920 is a HFO solvent that is VOC free. It basically is approved by NASA for the LOX certification testing. So the next option will be future proof number two. Go to vacuum degreasing for solvent applications. It's clean and green. It offers better cleaning because of the criteria. If you look at the lower surface tension, continuous removal of contaminants, and both polar and non-polar soils can be removed in a common machine. It's green. There's zero emissions under vacuum operation. Parts are dry, no drag out. Lower operating costs because it's under a vacuum. It requires lower energy. There's very little solvent consumption in the machines. The waste consolidation is constantly being removed from the machine without wasting the solvent, and no water consumption. And then finally, it's safe. It reduces the human exposure. It's not a HAP, hazardous air pollutants, and it has global approval. So, what are the benefits of vacuum degreasing? Well, first again, there's no processed water, nothing to provide, nothing to dispose of. Reduced floor space. These machines are typically 6x6 or 8x8, all in one space. There's no chemical mixing. Solvent being used is 100% concentration. It removes the soils, and then you distill the solvent inside to save it. There's no operator exposure, either for the operator or the ambient area around the machines. It's single process chemistry. You don't have to mix it. You don't have to run continuous test in regard to the compatibility of your soils going in or your metals. Reduced energy because it's under a vacuum. It takes much less heat to do the solvent. And reduced waste disposal, as we discussed. Nothing going to drain. It's all consolidated and goes out as a waste periodically out of the machine. Very low solvent consumption, and it is the lowest total operational cost in the solvent cleaning world. So how do you look at addressing the need to replace your solvent? Well, you need to identify the traditional solvent to be replaced. You identify the potential replacement candidates or process if you want to go with an alternate process. You confirm the green properties and regulatory approvals. This is very important because most plants will not be allowed to bring any chemistry in that their EH&S management does not approve of. You need to match the performance to production requirements. You have to make sure that your parts are clean going out and at the production rate required. You evaluate the long-term future sustainability. You don't want to change to one solvent and find out it's going to be gone the following year. You want to determine the true operational cost from the usage of the solvent, the waste disposal, the energy required, and your personnel labor issues. Confirm local regulations compliance because they can vary from federal to state. And then you implement the conversion after you've done your homework. And with that, you arrive at the final selection. So what's the right fit? It's the cost of compliance, the cost to change the process, the cost of quality, and cost of operations. All of these must be considered as you look at changing your solvent. And always remember that the supply discontinuation and EPA regs are looming around the corner. So why act now? Because it takes time to investigate the available options, the compatibility with the substrates and soils, the compatibility with the existing machines, the approvals, internal and external. It may be your customers who require approval for a PPAP or what's being applied to the parts that they're receiving. The EH&S concerns loom very large for every company, and a transition time to go in and make this change. Can it be a drop-in, or do you have to buy new equipment? And if new equipment is required, does that require a capital investment and lead time to obtain that equipment? So there's a lot of things to consider there, and it does take a little time. Don't delay as time passes quickly in today's world. So you can future-proof your solvents and provide solutions for environmentally preferred cleaning and, most importantly, sustainability. Please contact KYZEN for free technical support. So I put together a list of frequently asked questions that I receive either online or through the phone. And the first one is, will the new replacement solvents work in my existing degreaser? Typically, if you have a late model generation vapor degreaser, the new replacement solvents will drop in. Basically, just make sure that the machine is empty of all old solvent, reset the thermostatic controls, and you should be a transition change within a few hours. What is the best method to ensure that any replacement solvent will provide the same cleaning results in my existing degreaser? Well, the obvious answer is nobody can give you that right off the bat. You need to test, test, test. Most companies will provide these testing services free of charge, and you take your substrates and your soils and clean them in the new solvent you're looking at to verify the results. Can I use modified alcohol or hydrocarbon solvents in my open top degreaser? The answer is no. They're not designed to be used in an open top degreaser, only in a new modern vacuum degreasing system. And how can I know my new solvents will be available for a long term? This is a question that comes up a lot, and we understand that. No one can predict the future, what the EPA or OSHA will have. We just know that these new solvents, the materials that's in them, are basically look like to be available for the long-term future replacement of the old generation solvents. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to William.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you guys for tuning into this Tech to Tech session. If you would like to discuss this topic further or have any questions not answered in the session, please contact your local KYZEN regional manager or send an email to tech@kyzen.com, and we will have someone follow up with you as soon as possible. And if you like this video, be sure to follow us on our social media platforms for more expert cleaning content.